This is not just a story, it is a chilling account based on a true documented incident that took place on the infamous Clinton Road in New Jersey. For 29-year-old Ashton, a graphic designer who had recently moved from Portland, late-night drives through the countryside were a way to clear his mind. Clinton Road was notorious for its dense woods, sharp curves, and unsettling urban legends, but Ashton, being a practical man, always brushed those rumors aside as stories meant to scare tourists. On that particular night, the air was bitterly cold, and a thick, heavy blanket of fog had rolled in, swallowing the road ahead. It was exactly 2 a.m. Ashton was driving through the most isolated stretch of the forest when he suddenly felt a strange, heavy vibration through the steering wheel. The ambient atmosphere felt completely warped, and the air pressure dropped so fast that his ears popped. Sensing that something was wrong with his car, he slowed down and pulled over to the shoulder of the desolate road. The moment he killed the engine, a sound shattered the absolute silence of the woods. It was the piercing, blood-curdling scream of a young woman begging for help. The scream was so raw and terrifying that Ashton's blood ran cold. He rolled his window down a fraction of an inch, aiming his tactical flashlight into the dark tree line. Through the swirling fog, a figure stumbled out onto the asphalt. It was a girl draped in a tattered white gown, her feet bare against the cold road. Ashton yelled, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" But as the figure stepped into the direct beam of his headlights, his heart stopped. Her face was deathly pale. Her eyes were solid, hollow black orbs, and a twisted, unnatural grin stretched across her face. She looked exactly like the legendary Lady in White ghost of Clinton Road. The entity began moving toward the car with an impossible fluid speed. Panic seized Ashton, and he frantically turned the key, but the engine sputtered and died. The ghost reached the driver's side, violently smashing her hands against his window, her screams transforming into a guttural, demonic screech. Before he could react, she slammed a heavy rock into the glass, shattering it completely. Shards rained over Ashton as her pale, dirt-covered hands reached inside, clawing for his throat. In a final surge of adrenaline, Ashton twisted the key again. The engine roared to life, and he slammed on the gas, tearing down the road as the white silhouette dissolved into the fog behind him. Trembling and covered in cuts, Ashton drove straight to the nearest county police station. Detective Harris took his frantic statement and immediately dispatched a unit to the coordinate. At the scene, they found the shattered glass, but a meticulous search of the immediate woods revealed something shocking. Hidden behind a bush was a high-powered camouflaged Bluetooth loudspeaker used to loop the screaming audio. Following a trail of footprints, the police raided a small hidden cabin a quarter-mile away and arrested a 26-year-old woman named Brooklyn. Inside the cabin, police found the tattered white dress, realistic theatrical makeup, black contact lenses, and a collection of wallets stolen from previous victims. Brooklyn was no spirit. She was a dangerous, cold-blooded thief. She had weaponized the road's haunted reputation, using the looped screams to force drivers to stop, and the ghost disguise to paralyze them with fear so she could hijack their vehicles and rob them blind. Brooklyn was charged with first-degree robbery and assault, proving once again that the true terrors haunting America's loneliest roads are entirely human. The end. This terrifying account took place on Highway 9, a desolate road that cuts through the dense forests of Blackwood State Park in Tennessee. 27-year-old Caleb, a refurbished car dealer, was driving home alone after making a late-night vehicle delivery. The highway was infamous for the legend of the Blackwood Witch, a restless spirit said to ambush lonely drivers. Caleb had always laughed at these superstitions, but that night, a heavy, suffocating fog had reduced his visibility to nearly zero. It was exactly 2 a.m. Suddenly, the temperature inside Caleb's car dropped drastically, and the air felt heavy. Out of nowhere, the piercing, blood-curdling scream of a young girl echoed from deep within the dark tree line. The scream sounded so desperate that Caleb instinctively slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to a halt in the middle of the road. He rolled his window down slightly, aiming his flashlight into the swirling fog. Suddenly, a horrific figure emerged from the trees onto the asphalt. The entity was draped in tattered black rags with long, tangled white hair and a face that looked completely decayed like a corpse. It looked exactly like the legendary witch from the town's folklore. Before Caleb could even process the horror, the figure sprinted with unnatural speed and leaped directly onto the hood of his car. The entity pulled out a heavy industrial hammer and began violently smashing the windshield. As the glass shattered, she tried to reach inside to murder Caleb, letting out guttural, animalistic screeches. Paralyzed with fear for a second, Caleb finally threw the car into reverse and slammed on the gas. The sudden jolt threw the figure off the hood. Without looking back, Caleb sped down the highway into the night. Caleb drove straight to the county sheriff's station, pale and hyperventilating. A heavily armed police unit immediately rushed to the coordinates on Highway 9. At the scene, they found shattered windshield glass, but a search of the immediate woods revealed something sinister. Hidden high up in the pine trees were large camouflaged audio speakers looping the girl's screams. Tracking a path deeper into the woods, the deputies raided a small camper and arrested a local woman named Callie. Inside her camper, the police recovered the black tattered gown, a hyper-realistic rotting silicone mask, the industrial hammer, and thousands of dollars in cash and jewelry stolen from previous victims. Callie was no witch. She was a calculated, violent predator. She had weaponized the highway's haunted reputation to trap and rob helpless drivers in the dead of night. Callie was arrested and charged with attempted murder and armed robbery, proving once again that the monsters in the dark are entirely human. The end. This chilling account took place on the old San Antonio Road in Texas, a desolate stretch of highway flanked for miles by towering, dense cornfields and abandoned railway tracks. 30-year-old Derek, a logistics manager for a major shipping firm, was driving home exceptionally late after a grueling shift. The area had been notorious for decades due to the urban legend of the eyeless phantom, the vengeful spirit of a young girl said to wander the roadsides at night. Being an educated, pragmatic man, Derek had always dismissed these stories as cheap campfire tales meant to entertain tourists. But that night, the sky was suffocatingly black, the moon was entirely blocked by heavy storm clouds, and the road ahead was swallowed by darkness. It was exactly 2 a.m. Derek was navigating the most isolated sector of the farmlands when his car's digital dashboard and radio screen suddenly flickered violently before going completely dead. An oppressive, unnatural silence filled the cabin, and the air pressure dropped so rapidly that Derek found it hard to breathe. Out of nowhere, a sound shattered the quiet, the piercing, blood-curdling scream of a young girl echoing from deep within the thick cornfields. It sounded raw, desperate, and terrifyingly close, as if someone was running for their life. Driven by pure human instinct to help, Derek instinctively slammed on the brakes, pulling his sedan over to the muddy shoulder of the road. He rolled his window down an inch, clicking on his high-powered tactical flashlight to sweep the edge of the fields. Suddenly, the high stalks parted, and a figure bolted out into the direct glare of his headlights. She wore a stained, tattered vintage frock. Her dark hair was matted and wild, and most horrifically, where her eyes should have been, there were only hollow, dark, bloody sockets. Her face was a twisted, deathly pale mask that perfectly matched the description from the local folklore. Derek's entire body went numb with absolute terror. Before his brain could even signal his hand to shift into drive, the entity sprinted with predatory, terrifying speed, throwing herself against the driver's side door and violently rattling the handle to break inside. When the heavy electronic locks held, the entity's frantic screams instantly morphed into a deep, maniacal, and animalistic screech. She pulled a massive, jagged hunting knife from behind her back and began aggressively hacking at the driver's side window glass. With every brutal strike, deep spiderweb cracks spread across the pane, and she let out a twisted, echoing laugh that sounded completely unhinged. Desperate to survive, Derek unleashed a surge of adrenaline. He slammed the car into reverse and floored the accelerator. The sudden, violent jerk threw the entity off the side of the car just as she was attempting to climb onto the hood. Without looking back, Derek shifted into drive and sped down the highway at 100 miles per hour, watching the white silhouette dissolve into the black horizon. Covered in sweat and hyperventilating, Derek drove straight to the county sheriff's department. Seeing his state of shock, a heavily armed unit immediately dispatched to the coordinates on San Antonio Road. Upon inspecting the ditch near the cornfields, deputies discovered a camouflaged military-grade Bluetooth speaker looping the distressed female audio, tracking a trail of fresh boot prints deep into the fields. The police raided an abandoned, decaying barn a half-mile away and arrested a 28-year-old local woman named Amber. Inside the hidden structure, the police recovered the hyper-realistic eyeless silicone mask, professional theatrical makeup kits, the heavy hunting knife, and the personal belongings and credit cards of 3 tourists who had gone missing over the past year. Amber was no phantom. She was a calculated, cold-blooded serial thief and predator. She had brilliantly weaponized the road's haunted reputation, knowing that local superstitions would keep people from investigating the area too closely. By using the fake screams to halt vehicles and the terrifying disguise to completely paralyze her victims with fear, she was able to rob them blind or steal their vehicles effortlessly. Amber was arrested on multiple counts of armed robbery and attempted murder, proving once again that the most horrifying monsters in the American wilderness wear human faces. The end. The Agatha Amusement Park on the outskirts of Florida was famous across America for its annual horror nights. Thousands flocked to the park for its terrifying rides and haunted attractions. 25-year-old college student Logan, along with his friends, decided to visit the park's main attraction, the Haunted Mirror Maze. Local rumors claimed that a carnival clown had met a tragic end inside the maze decades ago, and his faceless spirit still wandered behind the glass. Logan dismissed the rumors as a cheap marketing stunt designed to sell tickets. He had no idea he was about to step into a real-life nightmare. It was exactly 2 a.m. The main lights of the carnival had been shut down, leaving the interior of the mirror maze illuminated only by eerie, pulsing red and green neon lights. As Logan navigated the confusing corridors of glass, he took a wrong turn and instantly became separated from his friends. He called out their names, but the disorienting reflections made it impossible to tell left from right. Suddenly, a sound shattered the heavy silence. The piercing, agonizing scream of a young girl crying for help echoed from the deepest, darkest corner of the maze. The scream sounded so frighteningly real that Logan's adrenaline spiked. though he tried to convince himself it was just a park actor. He pushed deeper into the labyrinth toward the sound. But as he stopped in front of a massive floor-to-ceiling mirror, his breath caught in his throat. In the reflection, standing directly behind him, was a towering figure in a bright, tattered clown suit. Horrifically, where his face should have been, there was only a smooth, featureless void of pale skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. In the reflection, the faceless clown was violently dragging a bleeding girl along the floor. Logan spun around in sheer panic, but the hallway behind him was completely empty. The horror was only visible through the glass. Before Logan could run, the faceless clown shattered a nearby trick mirror from the inside and lunged directly into the hallway. In his hand, he wielded a heavy industrial box cutter. Letting out a guttural, terrifying screech, the entity slashed downward, catching Logan across the shoulder. Pain flared through Logan's body as blood soaked his jacket. Screaming, Logan used his remaining strength to violently shove the attacker into a wall of mirrors, causing them to shatter. Without looking back, Logan sprinted frantically through the labyrinth of broken glass, bursting out into the cold night air. Bleeding and hyperventilating, Logan collapsed near the park's main security booth where his friends were waiting. Detective Carter, who was on duty at the carnival that night, immediately drew his weapon and led a unit into the maze. Upon reaching the back corner, the police discovered a high-end, camouflaged Bluetooth speaker hidden in the ceiling framework, looping the female screams. Following a trail of muddy boot prints and shattered glass, the deputies uncovered a hidden maintenance panel that led to a back room. Inside the hidden room, they caught a 24-year-old park maintenance worker named Felix Red-Handed. Scattered on his desk was the realistic, featureless silicone clown mask, the bloody box cutter, and a collection of expensive smartphones and gold jewelry stolen from terrified guests. Felix was no ghost. He was a calculated, ruthless predator. He knew that the maze's haunted reputation provided the perfect cover, as guests would mistake real screams for part of the show. He used the fake audio to isolate victims and the terrifying disguise to paralyze them with fear while he robbed them blind. Felix was arrested and charged with armed robbery and aggravated assault, proving once more that the real monsters of the carnival wear human masks.